Story 8. The flight that never landed. Flying was never something that scared me. I'd always considered nighttime flights a peaceful pause from the chaos of life. That night, I boarded a domestic flight, just a short 2-hour trip, nothing out of the ordinary. The plane took off smoothly and I settled into my window seat, watching the city lights fade as the dark sky enveloped us. The atmosphere inside the plane was calm. The cabin lights were dimmed, and many passengers were already asleep. The soothing voice of the pilot had announced that we could expect a smooth flight, with no delays. Everything seemed perfect, until about an hour after takeoff when I felt something different. A faint vibration rippled through the plane, and it began to shake gently. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a little turbulence," the pilot announced. It was a routine statement, nothing to be alarmed about. But as I looked out the window, I saw something that didn't make sense. In the sky, a bright red light pierced through the clouds, moving far too fast to be another plane. I tried to convince myself it was just the aircraft's lights reflecting on the window, but it quickly became clear it wasn't. The light was getting closer. Brighter and brighter, it seemed to hover in place as though observing us. The plane shook more violently, and an eerie silence filled the cabin. I glanced around and noticed something even more disturbing. The other passengers appeared frozen. No one moved. No one reacted to the turbulence. It was as if time inside the plane had stopped. As the shaking continued, I turned to the passenger next to me, a man who appeared to be sleeping. I called out to him, tapping his shoulder, but he didn't respond. His eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling slowly as though he were breathing, but something felt wrong. It was as if he were stuck in a state of inertia, completely disconnected from what was happening. I looked around the cabin again and saw that every other passenger was in the same condition. Some had their eyes shut, others stared straight ahead without blinking like living statues. Even the flight attendants, who had been serving drinks moments earlier, stood frozen in the aisle, their trays suspended in midair. Then the red light appeared again, this time much closer. I turned to the window and saw that it wasn't just one light but several, arranged in a circular pattern. They rotated slowly around something massive and indistinct, obscured by the darkness. My heart pounded and a chill ran down my spine. This wasn't a plane. It wasn't anything I could comprehend. Suddenly, the entire plane was flooded with an intense, blinding light. Everything around me turned white, and a deep, resonating hum filled the cabin. I covered my ears, but it was no use. The sound seemed to emanate from inside my head. It was an overwhelming sensation, like an invisible force was pressing my body into the seat, pinning me in place. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My eyes were locked on the window, and even through the blinding light, I could make out the silhouette of something moving outside, near the plane's wing. It was humanoid in shape but slender, with long arms and movements that defied gravity. I don't know how, but I could feel it watching me directly. The humming stopped as abruptly as it had started, and the bright light vanished. For a few seconds, everything was pitch black. When the cabin lights came back on, I looked around and saw that all the passengers were waking up as if nothing had happened. Murmurs filled the plane as people adjusted their seatbelts and resumed casual conversations, showing no sign of having noticed what I had seen. I glanced at the clock on the seat monitor. The flight was nearly 2 hours late, but no one seemed to notice or question it. The pilot didn't make any announcements about the turbulence or the delay. It was as if the time we spent in darkness simply didn't exist. I tried speaking to a flight attendant, but he just smiled and said, "Everything's fine, sir. Enjoy the rest of your flight." But I knew it wasn't fine. Something had happened on that plane, and I seemed to be the only one who remembered it. When the plane finally landed, the first thing I did was check the time on my phone. We were 3 hours late. The flight, which was supposed to last just over 2 hours, had stretched to nearly 5, but no one seemed bothered. The other passengers collected their carry-ons and disembarked calmly, as if nothing unusual had occurred. I was about to ask someone about the delay, but something stopped me. The uncomfortable silence and the feeling that I was the only one who noticed anything strange made me hesitate. I decided to wait until I was off the plane to process what had happened. At the baggage claim, I tried striking up conversations with a few passengers. I asked if they had noticed anything strange during the flight or knew why we had landed so late. Most replied with confused smiles as if they didn't understand the question. "Probably just turbulence," one woman said, while another shrugged and walked away. I tried to recall the details, the lights, the blinding glow, the figures outside the window. None of it seemed possible, but I knew what I had seen. The most unsettling part was the time lapse. What had happened during those lost hours? Why didn't anyone else seem to remember? Back home, I became obsessed with finding answers. I scoured the internet for similar accounts and found others who claimed to have experienced something like it, but every story was unique, fragmented, as though no one could fully comprehend what had happened. Since then, every time I see a plane crossing the night sky, a chill runs down my spine. I can't shake the feeling that, on that night, I was taken from something ordinary and placed under the gaze of something not of this world. To this day I wonder, why do I remember? Was it a mistake, or did they want me to know? And most of all, will they come back? If they do this time, will I be able to escape?